when people have given me trust in their lives, I internalize that and make sure that I go the extra mile because I don't want to dishonor that trust in any way.
Welcome to Visionary Advisor. This is the second episode. And today we were talking about values. We talk about values a lot, but we have to start at part number one. What are values? We say values are what's important to you. And there is a lot of talk about values, family values, values-based investing. We have different values. People use the term values all the time to talk about what's important to them or disagreements that they might have with other groups of people. But largely, we've observed one thing is usually missing, and that is defining your values. As you're sitting here in your car or listening to this, do you have a set of defined values, of core values, 3 to 5 words that govern the big decisions that you make? Most people don't. That's okay. And even fewer families have defined values. Why do you think I reached out to you to talk about values?
Because our first conversation we had, you were talking about values, and I kind of rattled off my personal values that I had developed like 25 years ago, and I think you were pretty surprised by that. So I think that's probably why you asked me, but I'm not sure. You tell me.
Yeah. That's definitely why I asked you. You know, we talk about values all the time at Total Family, and I can count on one hand the amount of people that have rattled off personal values to me. Mm-hmm. What made you do this exercise a long time ago?
Yeah, it was actually, I'm preparing for another talk, and I was going to talk about this, but it was actually in 1994. So 30 years ago, really. I was on a plane trip to San Francisco, and I was reading a book. I can't even remember the name of the book, but it was a book about a CEO who quit his job because he was thinking about his life and his values, and his company was misaligned with him. And they weren't unethical, they didn't do anything, but his personal values weren't aligned. So he quit his job. True story. At the end of the book, he was much happier as a human being. He was much more aligned with this new organization that he was part of. And he was CEO for another company that just brought him a lot more gratification and happiness in his life. And so I flipped the book to like the back and just started writing down things that I believed in, because I wanted to see, was my organization, see if my organization was aligned with my personal values. And I ended up with like 15 or 20 statements. Mm-hmm. And then over the course of several days, I was like, well, this one's kind of like this one. This one's kind of like, I can combine these two. And I came up with 5 things that I really believed in. And the more I thought about it, I was like, gosh, if I can live my life according to these 5 things, I'll be a more consistent human being. And at the end of the day, that's really what people want. They want consistency out of people they deal with. Inconsistency causes a lot of people to react, I guess, the way you want them to. It's just very unnerving for people to have inconsistent people in their lives that they're dealing with. So,
do you think, are you comfortable sharing those personal values, or do you want to keep them close to the vest?
No, I've shared them like a lot with people. So it starts with effort. I believe every human being has an obligation to themselves and everyone around them to give 100% effort in everything that they do. Second is empathy. My belief is that nothing meaningful in life happens without people working together, whether it's a business project or community effort, whatever it is, you need people working together to really achieve things. And I believe people will do their best work if they're around people they believe care about them. So whether you're a sports team or you're a business team or whatever. And so in order to show caring, you have to have genuine empathy. So I think empathy was number 2. Equality was number 3. I believe people should be judged based on the merit of their work, not any other superficial thing, the color of their skin or their religion or anything else superficial. So equality. And
Equality
then,
meaning like a fair shot.
I mean, I just think people should be treated fairly. You should look at someone, you work with someone, someone's your teammate, someone's your colleague in business. They should be judged based on their work and their output, not the color of their skin or the religion. So yeah,
Sure.
everybody should be treated fairly. It's kind of what Martin Luther King wanted out of the world, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah, so equality was three. Then trust. I believe people will do their best work if you trust them as opposed to micromanaging them. And a illustration of that was I had a boss one time when I was young, and I had just gotten promoted, and he knew more about my job than I knew about my job. And it can kind of concern me that he would do my job for me. So I said, hey, his name was Ray Murphy. I said, hey, Ray, I'm concerned that you're going to like override decisions I make, or, you're going to be the one really dictating the way things happen because you've got a lot of experience here. And he looked at me and he said, Glenn, I think you're the best person for the job. If you're not, I'll find the person that is. And so that might sound a little harsh, but what he was saying was he trusted me. And so when people have given me trust in their lives, I I internalize that and make sure that I go the extra mile because I don't want to dishonor that trust in any way. So I
Okay.
believe so trust was number four, and then truthfulness was number five. And truthfulness is really the hardest one for me because it's a combination of ethics and values and candor. And I think ethics and values are easier because, we sort of know what's right and wrong inherently. Candor's difficult. And the example I always use is when my wife comes downstairs and we're going out to dinner and she says, "How do I look?" I don't think she's looking for candor, right? She just wants to be told she looks nice. The other example I use is really around business. It's like we've all won a new client, a new opportunity, and you're working with three or four team members, and one person really didn't pull their weight, but yet you still won. And the easiest thing to do is ignore that. And the difficult thing to do is to go to that person and say, "Hey, Alex, like we won this deal. I'm super happy. You and I have a great relationship. You've done great work in the past, but I'm being honest. Like you didn't live up to the standard that we've agreed to." And like that conversation's hard. It takes energy and you can do it in an empathetic way, to use one of my earlier words, but like you can do it in a way where it's like, "Hey, I don't know what's going on in your life. You may be overwhelmed at work, plus you have things going on personally. I
Yeah.
just wanted to talk to you about this because that's not the standard we agreed to." And like if you don't have that conversation, then they think the standard is okay. Like over
Yeah.
time, it erodes quality. And so
Yeah.
and so candor, so this truthfulness, which is ethics and values plus candor. So those are my five: effort, empathy, equality, trust, and truthfulness. And I've really tried to operate out of that being my guide in life for over 30 years.
I love how they tie together too, because I think with trust, I always talk about great teams. You and I both like sports. You see a great team where two of the players are yelling at each other. They're doing that because they're holding themselves to a high standard. They have a high level of trust with one another, and that allows them to be more truthful. And if you don't have the trust and you've never displayed empathy to show the person that you care about them, then that's going to deteriorate trust and it's going to allow you to not have candor. So I love how all of yours tie together.
Well, when you talk about people, teammates kind of yelling at each other, I had a coach that I worked with for 10 or 15 years. He said, "Truth in love, not truth in anger." And so those
Mm,
teammates, they love each other, they care about each other. And so they can show that truth and it come across the right way. Where
yeah.
most people hold it up, they hold it in, they hold it in, they hold it in, and then they blow up on the person. So they're sharing that truth as anger as opposed to
Right.
love. And so truth in love like means you're truthful earlier in the
Yeah, yeah.
relationship, and you don't wait and let it build. We've all done it the wrong way and the right way in our lives, but yeah, that's a great illustration of, teammates kind of going at each other a little bit.
We always say the number one mistake with values is not defining them. And so many people struggle with this step. Why do you think so many people struggle to take that step of just finding the words
Hmm.
of values?
I think whether you're in business school or church or wherever, and people talk about values, I think people in their minds, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm a good person. It's the
Yeah.
right thing to have values. And they just don't think about it because inherently, they know that they're a good person. They know they have a good heart. They know that they care about the world. And so I think it's easy to skip that step of like, what do I really believe in? Like when I go back and read mine, and when other people read my values and they're like, I believe you owe it to everybody to give 100% in everything you do. You don't have to agree with that.
Sure.
But like if I'm learning a new thing, like I want to be the best I can be at it. Like other people, maybe they don't. So, and there's nothing wrong with having different values, but I
Right.
think people skip over it because I believe the vast majority of people in the world are good people and they have a good heart and they care. And so when they hear the word values, they just kind of skip it because there's an assumption that they have great values, right?
Yeah. I
And
agree with that. Like when you ask people about their values, they sort of sometimes think like you're asking them if they're a good person.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course everyone sometimes will put up the wall like of course I'm a good person. I do these things with values like we use 72 words at Total Family. None of them are bad.
Right.
Right? They're all great words. But I think the thing that is important with values like what you did in your exercise is you can't be all 72 all the time. And so if you know what those five are, in the moments where you have to make a tough decision or you can't really tell what the actual right move is, having those values as like okay, am I in violation of empathy, equality, trust, effort, truthfulness right now? And if you are, that's helpful because you're like, okay, this seems inconsistent with my values. Or sometimes it feels really consistent with your values and you know that like you can push forward with a little more certainty.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. It's interesting too, because like when you trust, like I believe in that trust thing, right? And I share it. But then what do you do when someone you work with makes mistake after mistake after mistake, and then you have to, so you end up operating out of uh positions that are in conflict with your values sometimes, because now I am going to micromanage a little bit more, even though
Yeah.
I believe if people are trusted, they'll take accountability, but then some people don't. And
Yeah.
so these things, first of all, my values in them are somewhat in conflict with each other. Like this candor thing is that a little bit in contrast with empathy.
Hmm.
Maybe I don't know. Over 30 years, I just try to figure out a way to work through them. But I do go back to them, like when I think about difficult situations, whether it's being super candid with somebody, being transparent when maybe, you know, I'm like, well, being completely transparent could be risky,
Yeah.
but if you really believe in transparency, then you kind of have to do it. And so I've like modified my positions, um, you know, a lot. Like that transparency issue. We have 160 owners of our company, and I believe if I send all of our financial statements out electronically to 160 people, they will end up in the hands of people I don't want them to be in, and they will most likely be used against me. So I believe in transparency, but I also don't want to be stupid about as a CEO of a company.
Yeah,
So on that issue, I've just come back and said, look, I want to be as transparent as possible. If anybody wants to see our financial statements, let's set up a meeting and we'll go through them with you. But I'm not going to email them out to 160 people, right?
sure,
So
sure.
I'm still adhering to my belief in transparency, but I'm not being stupid as a CEO. So
Yeah.
this is just a silly example of like how I've used them in my career.
Well, I think the other thing that is interesting is like you're talking about your personal values. You can have shared values with different groups of people along the way, right? With your spouse, you have a set of shared values regarding raising your family and being a family together. When you come together with your executive team at Prime, you have Prime has their shared values. Yours don't change.
Right.
You just can't take your personal values and impose them in every other area of their life because, in theory, everyone's coming with their own set of values. And I think a lot of organizations just kind of feel like values is something that you have to have. But for us, I feel like they help us make decisions. When we have to, like, we had someone that we decided wasn't really a good fit anymore. And I think we've all worked at organizations where something happens and then it's spun in a certain way.
Yeah.
And everyone who's receiving the message is like, this isn't really what went down, right? This is just like the message that's coming through. And so for me, authenticity is one of our company values. I was like, I just want to talk to these people like they're adults, tell them what I was thinking, tell them why we did it. And it was received so well, but like in that moment, the company values were telling us what to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting. Have you changed your values at all since 1994? You are a dad as well. How many kids did you have in 1994? And have your
One.
values changed? You had one. Okay.
One. No, I mean, they really haven't. I think my kids, when they describe me, would use words around my values. Like, I've gone through high school graduations, college graduations, marriages, anniversary. Like I've gone through a lot with my kids over the years, and when they write me letters and thank me for things, it's around, gosh, you have such a great work ethic. You're a great example in life, and like the words they use to thank me are aligned with my values. So that
Yeah.
tells me I've done a pretty good job of living by them. Again, like we've all failed at executing on things that we wanted to execute on, and
Of
I'm sure I
course.
haven't acted 100% in alignment with those values my entire life because like we've discussed, they're in conflict with each other, right?
Yeah. We always say like if you have them up on the wall, your best friend or your kids should walk in and be like, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
And it's like you're not going to live it 100% of the time, perfectly all the time, but they also shouldn't be like so far off
Right.
from what you are. I think you have to be realistic about what you're actually living.
Yeah. Well, and politicians, not to bring up a bad topic, but politicians are that way all the. I mean, everybody says, don't listen to what they say, listen, watch what they do.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of, public figures that get caught up in saying the right things. Almost everybody says the right things. Do they do the right things?
Yeah. When we have parents that are older, grandparents or someone with adult kids, they will often be like, "Well, is it too late to define our values in some way, shape, or form?" And for us, I feel like what you just said is even if you haven't defined them, even though you should, even though if you haven't, you're living your values in some way, shape, or form. So even if Glenn Spencer didn't, you know, say effort in some way, shape, or form, you're getting that message through to your kids in a different way, right? By like
Yes.
waking up every morning and just, the way that you're living your life too, right?
Yes. As you were talking, I was thinking of something like I had a colleague once who said, you know, if you want teams to act the right way, get a team together and ask them, okay, what are our rules going to be? What do we as an organization believe in? And he's like, 100% of the time, they'll say the right thing. And then
Mm,
once they say the right thing, then you just hold them accountable for what they said. You know what I mean?
right. What
But
would you say to, if you're thinking about, most people who listen to this podcast are wealth advisors.
yeah,
So what is the power of values in the industry that we're in, either for the wealth advisor or for their clients? Like, would you advocate that this is an exercise that is beneficial to the advisors and their clients?
yeah, 100%. There's all kinds of studies that show purpose-driven organizations, purpose-driven people perform better. So, I think there's a benefit to organizations. Our vision at Prime Capital is inspire people to achieve their life's ambitions. And, I think that's a much higher purpose than giving them investment advice or doing financial planning in a way or helping them. It's like helping them achieve their life's ambitions. Well, it starts with understanding, well, what are your ambitions in life? What do you want the next 30 years of your life to look like, or 40 years of your life? So inspire people to achieve their life's ambitions. That's a higher purpose. And then having values that back that up. One thing I've said, I've been in this industry 7 years now, and spent the first 30 years of my career in the insurance industry. And I've said that financial advisors as a collection of people are the greatest human beings I've like ever been around as like a category of people. So in my 7 years here, I've interviewed or talked to 1,000 financial advisors. And I try to ask every one of them one question. Why did you want to be a financial advisor? And Alex, I swear to you, 100% of the people that I've asked that question to have said the same thing. And it's, I want to help people.
Yeah.
And the first 50 times I heard it, I was like, oh, come on. You want to make a living. You want to make money. You want to do this. You want to do that. And they genuinely want to help people. And so that's a common value I see across the organization, is this need and desire to help people. And so I think most financial advisors have a leg up, even if they haven't defined all their values. 100% of the ones I've talked to, at least one of their values is helping other people.
Yeah.
And
I loved, we
oh,
talked about inspire others to achieve their life's ambitions when we had dinner.
yeah,
And I think one of the interesting things that there to me is the advisors, that it's not a fiduciary responsibility, but it's like, if you work under the assumption that people know what they want out of life, that's a different responsibility. I don't actually think most people know, and one of the things I want from advisors is for them to help their clients in that journey. Your purpose and your values. I think a lot of people are like, well, I want to retire, or I want to pay for college for my kids. And these are good answers, but you can keep digging in
yes.
in a way that I think can really help people. For those advisors that want to help and do care, it's like you can keep digging, because I don't know if people always know.
And you can also help them, because back to people not thinking deeply enough about something. So just take a client that you meet with, and you're having a discussion about what do they want out of their life, and they say something like, look, I really want to leave a legacy for my children and my children's children. Like,
Yep.
that's important to me.
Yep.
And then in the course of the discussion, like, I want to promote constant learning, and that's a value of mine. And so
Hmm.
maybe they do they're involved in charities about that. Well, if that person's fortunate enough to have enough money, well, maybe you set up college funds for the next 2 or 3 generations, as part of their financial plan, where you wouldn't have gotten to that unless you blended together some things that they had said. So it's just, that was an easy example that through the course of a conversation with somebody, you can help them get to a place that maybe they haven't even thought of,
Yeah.
that's in alignment with their values.
Yeah. And keep out like I just love there's just so much change happening in the world right now that it's like, all right, so the college fund. So are you saying college or are you saying growth? You know, like,
Yeah,
do we want to set up a more rigid mechanism that is college? Or are you saying if your great grandchild had this entrepreneurial idea that you would be okay with it, or they wanted to like take a sabbatical in a foreign country, then you're okay with it. I think getting to the underlying thing
yeah.
is always really really important too. The values can help you do that.
Yeah, totally. And, your point, like, there's no right answer to that, right? I
Right.
mean, someone may want to, they're the first person in their family to ever go to college, and they think having a college degree is like the most important thing, and like they want to make it about that. But to your point, someone else might say, I'll support any sort of learning growth initiative in my kids and my grandkids' lives. So yeah, there's no right answer. But it starts with really understanding what they do value, what they do want to achieve in their life, and like, what their ambitions really are.
Yeah. And I also love what you just said there because it's like you're talking about the why behind it, which I think sometimes is missing in the like estate process itself, where, the kid is sitting there being like, well, I wanted to go do this other thing, but this is written rigidly, so I can only use it for university. And it's like, that's because your grandfather was the first person in your family to go to college. And it's extremely important to him
Yeah.
and he talked about it his whole life. And it's like I still might not totally agree with it, but man, now I understand how he arrived at that decision. When you hear people who grew up in the Great Depression, experiences shape us
Yes.
in a way, and putting a little bit more color behind that stuff I think is always helpful for people because if they know your why, they're like, okay, like I again don't totally agree, but I understand. I didn't grow up in the Great Depression, and if I did, I probably would have this same thought that he or she did, right?
Yeah. 100%. We're all a combination of nature and nurture. We're like kind of who we came from, but we're definitely shaped by the events that we've experienced in our lives. So yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree with that.
I think you're a unique CEO in this space, and Prime is a unique company. You've been around the block a couple times, and so you're bringing lessons from your insurance career and your being a dad and all these kind of things into this endeavor with Prime. I feel like, is that fair?
Yeah, 100%.
The value of equality is interesting to me because you alluded to the shared owner model a little bit earlier. Is
Yeah.
that something that you advocated for when you were doing this? And is that you kind of bringing one of your values to the table of this organization? Because that's a pretty unique model in the space, right?
Yeah, I'll talk to you a little bit about that. So, I worked early in my career for big public companies, and at the end of the day, they were massively accountable to shareholders. So, we could debate whether that's the North Star or not, but that's
Sure.
how most companies are run. My other observation was that as companies get big, now I'm back to my values, as companies get big, they stop trusting people. So these huge organizations with hundreds of thousands of employees, the people at the top create a bunch of rules because they want consistency of performance. So they create a bunch of rules, and those rules end up turning into micromanagement. So I was working for a $12 billion company running a $100 million region, but I wasn't really running anything. I followed the rules of New York in running this business, right? And so I saw the impact of that. And I'll give you some specific examples in a minute. But then I left that big public company, went to work for a privately held company that also got big, but trusted its people more. And so every office had an executive committee that made the decisions about spending and governance in that office, while adhering to overarching principles of the company. But I'll give you an example. I'm running an office for a big publicly traded company. We have a $200,000 budget for charitable giving. Someone walks into my office on January 1st and they say, hey, we should sponsor XYZ event. It's $25,000. It's a big client. I say, okay. Someone walks into my office in August, asks the same question, same kind of client, and I'm like, we're out of money because we had exceeded our budget by then, right? So did I make a good qualitative decision there? I would say no. Mm-hmm. Now, at my last company, someone walks into the local management team and says, hey, my client has XYZ event. They're a big client. And the dialogue would go, well, Alex, I see how that helps you. We make $100,000 on that client and you get paid based on that client. Like, that's good for you, but is that good for all of us?
Right.
And where that would land would be, hey, if you pay half, we'll pay half. But my point in that of illustrating this is that company made better decisions. Why did they make better decisions? Because people were thinking and acting like owners. And to me, that's the magic of business. If you can have everybody walk in the door thinking and acting like an owner as opposed to an employee, then that is going to be magical. Another illustration would be my dad worked for a plumbing contractor his whole life, 30 employees. My dad ran the office, was the dispatcher, my dad was the guy that ran the office. The owner estimated and sold. So he was the sales guy. And then they had 28 plumbers, right? The guy's name was Bill Collins, who owned the company. He knew my dog's name, was at every cookout in our backyard, was at my high school graduation, overpaid my dad. But like the way that he treated my dad as the owner, an important person, and he owned the company is different than a manager treats an employee. And so I think being able to get to a place where people are walking in the office, acting and thinking like owners, they're going to treat our people better. They're going to treat our clients better. They're going to treat our business better. They're going to hold themselves to a higher standard as an owner. So I think this idea of ownership and getting more people to think and act like owners makes organizations all the more powerful.
And like as you are growing and acquiring, you want those owners all around the country representing Prime, thinking about Prime as the entity, right?
Think about, I mean, just when they hand a client their business card and it says partner on it or the partners on the signature line, I mean, those clients know that partner signifies owner, and it has an enormous impact. It's had an enormous impact on the success that we've had as an organization, and it'll continue to be a critical part of our company moving forward.
There is a lot of acquisition and movement in the independent wealth space right now. You guys are part of it. I had a chance to talk to one of the firms that you acquired of late, and the principal over there told me that when they decided to go with Prime, he felt a value alignment with the organization. And I thought that was really cool. As these advisors are talking to, every advisor I talk to is like, I get 10 emails a day, 10 phone calls a week. They're not sure kind of where to go. Should they uncover their own values first and think about that as they're talking to, potential partners like this? Or do you think that there is, how do you tie in values to a decision like this that is a huge decision for any advisor who's considering selling their practice?
Gosh, you give me such easy questions. So, as you can probably imagine from knowing me a little bit, I've thought a lot about this.
Yeah.
And this is what I tell people. I'm like, look, I totally understand what you're going through. This event, selling your business, is the culmination of like your life's work. It's more than a financial advisory business. The people that work there are your family. The clients are your family. Like this is a super important decision. And first of all, we will honor how important that decision is to you in all the years after that. Like we respect and honor the fact that like you're doing this. Um, and then I always say this, I'm like, you know, this is going to be hard for you because money is going to be a big part of it. And so you're going to see all these numbers. And I'm just telling you, you're selling the business, you're going to work another 10 or 15 years, and you're going to have more personal and financial success if you get into the organization that you're the most aligned with culturally and from a value perspective. Like
Yeah.
if you sell your company and you're not happy with the leadership of that organization, you're not happy with the values they exhibit, you're not going to be motivated at work, you're not going to get your earn out, you're not going to keep growing the business and make more money in the future. Like the whole thing is going to get out of alignment. It's back to my original story about that CEO who left his job. Gosh, he was so much more successful as a human being because he got in alignment. And these people that are selling their businesses are going to be way more successful if they get in alignment with an organization. And it's super hard to do. I mean, there's millions and millions of dollars at stake, and those decisions are hard, and they have one time to sell their business. What what I just share with them is, look, everybody who's doing what we're doing, we've done 27 acquisitions in the last 6 years, and there's firms out there that have done a lot more than us.
Yeah.
And my belief is there's going to end up being 10 or 15 large independent financial advisory firms, and they're all going to have all the same kind of resources. And the
Yeah.
firms that are going to deliver are going to be the ones that have the right values and culture. And so,
Right.
like, man, get yourself in the right values and culture. And I think we win the value cultures game here at Prime Capital more than any of our competitors. I mean, when people come see us, we win 9 out of 10 times. And
Yeah.
I do think it's because we've got a great culture and value system.
I agree with that. I mean, we'll see how the prediction plays out, but it feels like what's happening in college football, where there's going to kind of be like haves and have nots. It feels like that's what's happening in the independent space. And if you're not in one of the big conferences, you're not going to have the resources to kind of keep going. But to your point, there's a difference between, University of Michigan and Ole Miss. Neither are bad, but they're different.
Yep.
And so trying to find that firm that's aligned with you. We told a story at Exit Planning about it wasn't a wealth advisor, it was a operating business, a traditional operating business in the healthcare space, where the guy ended up taking a lower offer from the people that were the three offers that he had. He had 3 kids, still had a son in high school. So didn't want to travel, didn't want to be stuck traveling, in his son's last year. So one of the jobs was going to basically force him to relocate to Chicago for like half the days in each month. So that didn't work for him. And one of them was going to get rid of the brand. That didn't work for him. It feels to me like the buyer's remorse is almost never about the money. Like if you
It's
sell your
never
practice,
about the
like,
money.
right, you're going to get a good deal. And definitely historically right now, you're going to get a good deal. But the stuff that you're talking about, if autonomy is really important to you, maybe there's a firm that's a little more aligned with that. Growth and decision making and feeling like an owner and doing some of the stuff that Prime is doing. If you're aligned there, that's going to put you in a different spot from like a remorse gap. Do you agree with that the remorse is rarely about the money?
It's rarely about the money. Difficult decisions in life are rarely about the money. And people tend to use money as a justification because it's easy. So I'll just give you another example that has nothing to do with like M&A, but employees, when they change jobs, they always say, "Oh, well, I'm getting paid more." Look, if you're going to get a new job, the new firm's not going to pay you less, right? So you're
Yeah.
generally going to get a little bit of an increase. But people leave their jobs. The number one reason they leave their jobs is because they perceive that there's not opportunity for growth. The number one reason, they don't think they're going to be able to grow. The number two reason is they don't like their manager. But like what they say at the exit interview is, oh, I'm going to make more money because it's easy. And
Right.
I do think in this sale of business thing, I think more often than not, I would say that owners try to pick the firm that they think will be the best fit long term. Now, the money needs to be close, right?
Sure.
But I think the buyer's remorse is it's never about the money. You never talk to someone 2 years afterward that's unhappy and says, "Oh, they didn't pay me enough money up front." It's always cultural things,
Yeah.
um, organizational and cultural things that cause unhappiness after the fact. Yeah, I agree with that.
And you're talking about growth, like not necessarily a title promotion for people, just the ability to feel like they're being challenged and they can grow as a professional and keep working towards their purpose, right? Not just title.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, as I was saying it, I was thinking, well, what about the person who's 60? And then I'm like, well, I'm 60. Like, but I think people want to grow throughout their career, and hopefully I'm still growing as a person. And then you do get to a point where you're like, okay, I want to, when you leave an organization, it's important that you feel good about leaving, and particularly in this industry, like for financial advisors, they genuinely want to be in a place that they think their clients are going to get taken care of. Because it's not just their clients, it's their clients' kids and their kids' kids. I mean, when we do this right as a financial advisor, you have generational relationships, and it's important. So I do think people want to grow. And I do also think at some point they want the legacy of their organization to support their belief system.
Yeah. Just as we're winding down here and tying it back to values, can I give you a couple lightning round questions?
Yes.
Okay. How do you think values are useful in estate planning?
Well, I used an example earlier. I think, look, there's hundreds and hundreds of estate planning techniques that can be used, setting up wills and trusts
The
and
structural components.
the structure. That will look different. It will have different rules based on the values of the individual. I'll give you a specific example for me. We didn't want our kids to inherit a bunch of money and not have to work. So we limited how much income they could take off of the estate that they inherited. And
Yep.
then the older they got, they could take more. But like it was important to my wife and I that our kids didn't have too much money, that they didn't have to work themselves.
Hmm.
You can disagree with that, but our
Sure.
values were that I want hardworking
Right.
kids. You can
Right.
imagine
Right.
that based on what I shared with you earlier. But
Yeah.
so, I could use tons of examples, but yeah, I think it's impossible to do a quality estate plan without understanding the values of the person. I give you another example. Like I'm using personal examples now because it's easier, but like
Yeah.
if my wife and I are to pass away before my daughter gets married, so the daughter's family pays for the wedding, my two boys have to pay a third of the wedding costs because I want her to be treated how she would have been treated as if we were here.
Yeah.
Again, you don't have to agree with that or disagree with that, but like if we were alive, all the money would be ours and we'd be paying for the wedding, so it's only fair that they pay a third, each one of them pay a third for her wedding.
Yeah.
So,
And you can
um,
hear some of your values in the way you're describing this, which I think is cool. So, like that example, we're telling our podcast audience here. So, do your kids know this?
yeah, yes, yes, yes. So we have family meetings with our trust attorney and financial advisors. Yeah.
And when you kind of put the why behind all of that, was that hard to do? I mean, one of the things we hear all the time is just the multi-generational conversations are a struggle for a lot of families to communicate this stuff. They end up not saying anything, which we just don't think that is the best approach, like the surprise approach. But anyone who's trying to maybe communicate some decisions regarding legacy estate type work, what advice would you have for them as someone who's actually done it?
Just do it early and do
Hmm.
it transparently. Like it's your decision. When I say your decision, it's like my wife and I's decision how we hand down whatever we hand down. As long as we do it, we're going to do it according to our values and our principles. And it's hard to argue with values and principles and beliefs. It's hard to argue with that. Where the problem occurs is when they wait too long and then they say something that's misaligned with the other person's belief. And the other person, by the way, the other person, like my kids, can have different beliefs. And if I leave it open for them to, oh, I think this is going to happen. Oh, Glenn's going to give this there. Glenn and
Right, right.
my parents are going to do X, Y, or Z. If you allow them to develop their own belief, just be honest and transparent. Tell them as early as possible. That would be my advice.
I love that. I want to read you a quote. You tell me if you agree, disagree. Jim Collins quote: Values come before goals, before strategy, before tactics, before products, before market choices, before financing, before business plans, before every decision. Values come first, and all else follows in business, career, and life. Agree or over the top?
Agree. I totally agree with that.
Values come
I think
first.
they lead you to all those other, they lead you in all those other things were mostly decisions. How do we capitalize? How do we finance? How do we go to market? So those are decisions, and you're not going to make the right decisions if you're not grounded in the values that, underpin you as a person and your organization.
And if I'm an advisor or I'm already working with clients, I've been doing this 20 years or something, and I'm like, is it too late? We already did the estate plan. We already did the stuff. Is it too late now? What would you say to anyone who maybe is asking that question? Like the ship's already sailed.
It's never too late. I mean, like you probably know how I'm going to answer all these questions, but no, I don't think it's too late. I think if you're a financial advisor and you've developed a plan with a client, maybe you haven't gone deep enough on this. I mean, it's these are easy conversations to have. Hey, Alex, we've been working together 20 years and we put your estate plan together a dozen years ago. And like, I think it's time to like revisit it. Let's revisit it against, what you and your wife's values are today. Like, it's easy to bring it back up.
Sure.
Um, I would say never too late.
I love that. Glenn Spencer, CEO of Prime Capital. Is there anything that we should know, or if people want to learn about Prime and a company that is inspiring others to achieve their life's ambition, where should they go?
What I'd want them to know about our company is that we live our values and we have a sense of purpose. We are dreaming big. So, my mission is to be the best professional services firm in the world. And I can talk to you later about that standard, but I want to be compared to Bain, McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, big global law firms, KPMG, PwC. We want to be the best professional services firm in the world while having incredible values and this sense of purpose in helping people achieve their life's ambitions.
I love it. That's a great pitch and a really lofty goal too, which I think for anyone who's thinking about joining a journey like that, when you have a lofty goal, there's a long journey ahead. You guys have already come really far, but there's still a lot more to go, right?
Absolutely.
That is all we have for you today, visionary advisors. Until next time, remember the future of wealth starts with you. Thank you, Glenn Spencer. I'm Alex Kirby, founder of Total Family. Until next time.